Hello, my friend. Welcome back to Fluent Pulse. Today I want to take you into a story that is more than a story. It is a story about dreams. It is a story about struggle. It is a story about words, imagination, courage, and destiny. This is the story of a boy who was not born rich. He was not born powerful. He did not grow up in a palace. He did not study at a great university. He did not begin life with fame, money, or strong connections. But this ordinary boy did something extraordinary. He used words to change the world. His name was William Shakespeare. Today, when people speak about English literature, his name still shines like a bright star. More than 400 years have passed. Kings have disappeared. Empires have changed. Cities have grown. The world has become modern. But Shakespeare's words are still alive. People still read his plays. Students still study his stories. Actors still perform his characters. Writers still learn from his imagination. And English learners, just like you, can still find power, beauty, and inspiration in his life. But before Shakespeare became a famous writer, before his name became known around the world, before his plays were performed on great stages, he was only a child. A curious child, a quiet observer, a boy with open eyes and a hungry imagination. And that is where our story begins. It was a cold April day in the year 1564. In a small English town called Stratford-upon-Avon, a baby boy was born. The town was peaceful and simple. There were narrow streets, there were wooden houses. There was a calm river flowing gently through the town. People did not live fast lives. They worked with their hands. They sold goods in the market. They looked after their families. They told stories to each other. There were no phones. There was no internet. There was no television. Life was slower. But maybe because life was slower, people listened more carefully. They noticed small things. They watched faces. They heard voices. They remembered stories. And in this small town, John and Mary Shakespeare held their baby son in their arms. They named him William. They did not know that one day this child would become one of the greatest writers the world had ever known. William's father, John Shakespeare, was a glove maker. He made gloves from leather and sold them in the town. He was hardworking. He was respected. He tried to give his family a good life.
Totally worth the climb.
William's mother, Mary Arden, came from a farming family. She was kind, strong, and caring. Together, John and Mary built a home filled with children, noise, daily work, and ordinary love. William was one of 8 children. His house was not silent. There were voices. There was movement. There was laughter. There were problems. There were small family arguments. There were moments of joy and moments of worry. And young William watched everything. He watched how people spoke. He noticed how his father talked to customers. He noticed how his mother cared for the family. He listened to the sounds of the market. He heard people laughing, complaining, arguing, bargaining, and telling stories. At that time, he did not know that these everyday moments were teaching him something powerful. They were teaching him human nature. Because a great writer does not only write words. A great writer understands people. He understands love. He understands fear. He understands ambition. He understands jealousy. He understands sadness. He understands hope. And slowly, without knowing it, young William was learning all of this from life itself. As a child, William was curious. He wanted to know more. He wanted to understand the world around him. He was not only interested in books, he was interested in people. He listened carefully. He observed deeply. He asked questions in his heart. Why do people love? Why do people fight? Why do people dream? Why do people lie? Why do people feel pain? Why do people hope for something better? These questions would later become the soul of his plays. But in the beginning, H. Always stable. Money can disappear. Status can change. Happiness can turn into worry. People can rise. People can fall. And these truths would later appear again and again in his writing. His plays are full of kings who lose power, lovers who lose each other, friends who betray friends, good people who suffer, ambitious people who destroy themselves. Why could he write these things so deeply? Because he had watched life closely. He had felt uncertainty early. He had seen worry inside his own home. But William did not become hopeless. Instead, he became more observant. He felt things deeply. He collected emotions, he collected voices, he collected memories. And slowly, he was becoming a storyteller. Even as a young boy, William loved words. He enjoyed poems and rhymes. He liked the sound of language. He liked the way words could create pictures in the mind. He could entertain his friends, he could imagine scenes, he could act and play roles, but nobody in Stratford knew what he would become. To most people, he was just William, the glovemaker's son. A boy from an ordinary family, a boy walking through ordinary streets. A boy with ordinary problems. But inside him, something was growing. A dream. A hunger. A creative fire. And that fire would not stay small forever. As William grew older, life became more serious. By the time he was a teenager, his family's financial problems had become worse. His father's business was not strong like before. The family had less security. William saw how quickly respect could change when money disappeared. He saw how society treated people differently when they were no longer successful. This taught him another lesson. Life is not only about what people show on the outside. Behind every face there is a story. Behind every smile there may be worry. Behind every proud person there may be fear. Behind every quiet person there may be a dream. This understanding made William different. He did not only look at people, he looked into people. He noticed their emotions. He noticed their hidden struggles. He noticed how people behaved when they wanted love, power, respect, or safety. And later, this became his greatest strength. Because Shakespeare's characters feel real. They are not perfect. They are human. They love deeply. They make mistakes. They feel jealousy. They chase power. They feel guilt. They fear death. They dream of greatness. They fall because of weakness. They rise because of courage. And all of this began with one boy learning to observe life. Then when William was 18 years old, something important happened. He fell in love. Her name was Anne Hathaway. Anne was intelligent, strong, and independent. She was older than William. In fact, she was about 8 years older than him. At that time, this was unusual. People noticed such things. Society had strict opinions. But love does not always follow rules. William and Anne were drawn to each other. Their relationship became serious, and soon their lives changed quickly. Anne became pregnant before marriage. In those days, this was a very serious matter. Society was strict. Families cared deeply about reputation. A child born outside marriage could bring shame and difficulty. So William and Anne had to marry quickly. In November 1582, William Shakespeare married Anne Hathaway. He was only 18 years old, very young, still trying to understand life, still trying to find his direction, and now he was a husband. Soon after, he became a father. Their first child was a daughter named Susanna. Then, 2 years later, Anne gave birth to twins, a boy named Hamnet and a girl named Judith. By the age of 21, William Shakespeare was already a husband and the father of 3 children. Think about that for a moment. He was still young, he had no great career, he had no stable fortune. His father's business was struggling, his own future was unclear, but he had responsibility. A wife, 3 children, a family to support, and a question standing in front of him. What should he do with his life? He could have followed his father's path. He could have become a glove maker. He could have stayed in Stratford and lived a small, ordinary life. But something inside him wanted more. He had words. He had imagination. He had stories. He had a burning desire to create. Maybe he did not know exactly where the road would lead, but he knew he could not ignore the voice inside him. That voice was telling him to move, to search, to risk, to become something more. And then began one of the most mysterious periods of Shakespeare's life. Historians call these years the lost years, from 1585 to 1592. Records of Shakespeare's life are unclear. Nobody knows exactly what he did. Some people believe he worked as a teacher. Some believe he joined traveling actors. Some believe he had trouble in Stratford and had to leave. Some stories say he may have been caught hunting illegally on a rich man's land. Nobody knows the full truth. But perhaps this mystery makes his story even more interesting, because sometimes the most important years of a person's life are the years nobody sees. The years of struggle, the years of learning, the years of confusion, the years of silent preparation, the years when a dream is still hidden. Maybe Shakespeare was learning. Maybe he was watching actors. Maybe he was practicing. Maybe he was failing. Maybe he was searching for a way to survive. But one thing is certain. When he appeared again in history, he was no longer only a small-town boy. He was in London, and London was waiting. The next chapter of his life was about to begin, and with it, the world of English literature was about to change forever. William Shakespeare reached London. His life entered a completely new world. Stratford-upon-Avon was quiet. London was different. London was alive. It was loud. It was crowded. It was full of movement, trade, ambition, danger, dreams, and opportunity. People came from many places. Some came to sell goods. Some came to find work. Some came to become rich. Some came to become famous. And some came because they had nowhere else to go. London was not an easy city. It could lift a person high, but it could also break a person quickly. For a young man like William Shakespeare, London was both exciting and frightening. He had no powerful family behind him. He had no great fortune. He had no famous name. He had no strong connections waiting to help him. But he had something inside him that was stronger than comfort. He had imagination. He had hunger. He had courage. And he had words. At that time, London was becoming the heart of English theater. People loved plays. Theaters were full of energy. Crowds came to watch stories about kings, lovers, fools, soldiers, ghosts, villains, and heroes. A stage could become anything. It could become a palace. It could become a forest. It could become a battlefield. It could become a street. It could become a person's dream. And for Shakespeare, this world felt like home. He began working in the theater. At first, he was not the great Shakespeare we know today. He was learning. He was watching. He was listening. He was acting in small roles. He was helping theater companies. He was studying how the stage worked. He watched how actors used their voices. He watched how they moved their bodies. He watched how audiences reacted. He learned when people laughed. He learned when people became silent. He learned when a story touched the heart. This was his real university. Maybe he did not study at Oxford or Cambridge, but he studied people. He studied emotion. He studied performance. He studied life. And slowly he began to write. At first his plays were simple and entertaining. He wrote stories that could make people laugh. He wrote scenes that could hold attention. He learned how to keep an audience interested. But Shakespeare was not satisfied with only simple entertainment. He wanted to go deeper. He wanted to ask bigger questions. Why do people love so strongly? Why do people betray those who trust them? Why does power change a person? Why does ambition sometimes destroy the heart? Why do good people suffer? Why do people make choices they later regret? These questions became the center of his writing. His plays were not only stories, they became mirrors. When people watched Shakespeare's plays, they saw themselves. They saw their own fears. They saw their own desires. They saw their own mistakes. They saw their own dreams. This is one reason Shakespeare became powerful. He did not only write about kings, he wrote about human beings. Even when his characters were kings, queens, soldiers, or nobles, their emotions were human. They felt love. They felt jealousy. They felt anger. They felt guilt. They felt fear. They wanted respect. They wanted power. They wanted meaning. And because of this, people understood them. By the early 1590s, Shakespeare was becoming known in London's theater world. His name was rising. People were beginning to notice him. But success often brings criticism. Not everyone was happy to see him growing. One famous writer named Robert Greene insulted him. He called Shakespeare an upstart crow. That meant Shakespeare was seen as a nobody who was trying to act like an important writer. It was an insult. It was meant to hurt him. Imagine how painful that must have been. Shakespeare had come from a small town. He was trying to build a life. He was working hard. And then a famous writer mocked him in public. Many people would feel broken. Many people would stop. Many people would say, "Maybe I am not good enough." But Shakespeare did not let the insult destroy him. He did not answer with weakness. He answered with work. He wrote more. He practiced more. He learned more. He became stronger. This is a powerful lesson for every English learner and every dreamer. When people criticize you, do not stop immediately. Listen if there is something useful. Improve if you need to improve. But do not let another person's words kill your dream. Sometimes criticism is not a sign that you are failing. Sometimes criticism is a sign that people are noticing you. Shakespeare kept moving forward. He continued writing plays. He continued acting. He continued building his name. And slowly the people who doubted him had to pay attention. But then a great danger came to London. In 1593, a deadly disease called the plague spread through the city. The plague was terrifying. People became sick quickly. Families lost loved ones. Fear moved through the streets. Public places closed, and theaters were forced to shut down. For Shakespeare, this was a serious problem. The theater was his work. The theater was his income. The theater was his dream. When theaters closed, he could not perform plays. He could not earn money in the usual way. Many people might have given up. They might have waited helplessly. They might have complained. But Shakespeare used the difficult time differently. If he could not write for the stage, he would write for the page. He began writing poetry. During this period, he wrote long poems that became famous. His poems showed beauty, language, emotion, and imagination. They helped him reach important readers. They helped him become respected not only as a playwright, but also as a poet. This part of his life teaches us something important. A closed door is not always the end. Sometimes a closed door forces you to discover another door. When the theaters closed, Shakespeare did not stop creating. He changed direction. He used what he had. He adapted. This is one of the greatest skills in life. Do not only survive problems, learn how to grow through them. If one path closes, use another path. If one plan fails, make another plan. If one opportunity disappears, prepare for the next one. Shakespeare's dream did not die during the plague. In some ways, it became stronger. When the theaters reopened in 1594, Shakespeare returned to the stage with more experience, more confidence, and a stronger name. He became part of an acting company called the Lord Chamberlain's Men. This was an important turning point. He was not alone anymore. He had a company, he had actors, he had a stage, he had an audience. And most importantly, he had a place where his imagination could grow. The Lord Chamberlain's Men became one of the most successful acting companies in England. Shakespeare wrote plays for them. He acted with them. He helped make the company famous. This shows another lesson from his life. Talent is powerful, but talent becomes stronger when it has the right environment. A good team can help your talent grow. A strong circle can support your dream. A serious environment can push you to become better. Shakespeare's plays became more powerful during this time. He wrote about love and heartbreak. He wrote about confusion and destiny. He wrote about ambition and danger. He wrote about friendship and betrayal. He wrote about laughter and sadness. One of his most famous love stories was Romeo and Juliet. It was not only a story about two young lovers, it was also a story about family conflict, anger, choices, and tragedy. People still remember it today because love and conflict are still part of human life. Then there were stories of power and ambition. Stories where people wanted greatness but lost themselves on the way. Stories where desire became dangerous. Stories where one wrong choice opened the door to destruction. Shakespeare understood that human beings are complicated. We can love deeply, but we can also hurt others. We can dream beautifully, but we can also become controlled by jealousy. We can seek success, but we can lose our peace. This is why his writing felt alive. He did not make people simple, he made them human. By the late 1590s, Shakespeare was no longer just a struggling writer from Stratford. He was one of the most important names in London theatre. People came to hear his words. Actors wanted to perform his plays. Audiences remembered his characters. His name was growing stronger. But Shakespeare still wanted more. Not only more money, not only more fame. He wanted a permanent home for his work. He wanted a place where his stories could live. Then in 1599, something extraordinary happened. Shakespeare and his acting company built their own theater. They called it the Globe Theater. Imagine the scene. A large circular theater, an open roof, wooden walls, a stage in the center. Thousands of people gathering with excitement. Some people stood close to the stage. Some sat in higher galleries. Rich and poor came together. Merchants, workers, students, nobles, travelers, and dreamers all entered the same place. They came to watch stories. They came to escape daily life. They came to laugh. They came to cry. They came to feel something real. The Globe Theater became Shakespeare's creative home. It was more than a building. It was a kingdom of imagination. On that stage, his characters spoke. His kings made decisions. His lovers whispered promises. His villains planned betrayal. His fools told the truth through jokes. His ghosts walked in darkness. His heroes faced destiny. The stage was simple. There were not modern lights. There were not special effects like today. There were not cameras or digital screens. But Shakespeare had language, and language was his greatest magic. With words, he could create a storm. With words, he could create a battlefield. With words, he could create a broken heart. With words, he could create a kingdom. This is why Shakespeare is so important for English learners. He reminds us that words have power. Words can entertain. Words can explain. Words can comfort. Words can persuade. Words can inspire. Words can change the way people think. If you are learning English, do not think words are small. Every new word you learn gives you more power. Every sentence you practice gives you more confidence. Every story you understand opens your mind. Language is not only for exams. Language is for life. It helps you express your feelings. It helps you share your ideas. It helps you connect with people. It helps you tell your story. At the Globe Theatre, Shakespeare wrote and performed some of his greatest works: Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello, Julius Caesar. These were not just plays, they were deep studies of the human heart. Hamlet explored doubt, pain, revenge.
Listen carefully. We must address this critical issue right now. The data is undeniable. We cannot delay any longer. I urge you, take action immediately. The consequences of inaction. Thank you for your theory.
Jealousy, trust, and destruction. Julius Caesar explored power, politics, loyalty, and betrayal. These stories became famous because they asked questions that still matter. What happens when ambition becomes too strong? What happens when jealousy controls the mind? What happens when trust is broken? What happens when a person cannot decide? What happens when power becomes more important than truth? These are not old questions. They are human questions. And that is why Shakespeare's work still feels alive today. As Shakespeare became more successful, his life changed. He earned money from the theater. He became a shareholder in the Globe. This meant he did not only earn money as a writer, he also earned money when plays were performed. This was smart. He was not only creative, he was also practical. He understood that art and business could work together. His success allowed him to buy property. He bought a large house in Stratford called New Place. Think about that journey. The boy from a struggling family. The young man with no clear future. The writer insulted by others. The actor trying to survive in London. Now he was wealthy. Now he was respected. Now he owned property. Now he had built a name that people could not ignore. But his journey was still not finished. The next chapter would bring royal attention. It would bring deeper plays. It would bring more fame. And it would also bring the shadow of age, loss, and reflection. Because every great life has seasons. There is a season of struggle. There is a season of growth. There is a season of success, and there is a season when a person looks back and asks, what did my life mean? For Shakespeare, that season was coming. But before we reach it, remember what this part of his life teaches us. He left a small town and entered a difficult city. He faced criticism. He faced disease. He faced closed theaters. He faced uncertainty. But he did not stop creating. He adapted. He worked, he learned, he grew, and he turned every difficulty into material for greatness. So, if your life is difficult right now, do not think your story is over. Maybe you are in your own lost years. Maybe you are learning in silence. Maybe people do not see your effort. Maybe your dream is still hidden. But keep going. Your London may be waiting. Your stage may be waiting. Your opportunity may be closer than you think. But then history changed again. In 1603, Queen Elizabeth I died. She had ruled England for many years. Her time had been important for art, theater, exploration, and national pride. During her reign, theater had grown strongly. Shakespeare's company had also found success during that period. But when a ruler dies, the whole country becomes uncertain. People ask questions. What will happen now? Will the new king support theater? Will he dislike actors? Will he close theaters? Will life become harder? The new ruler was King James I. At first, nobody knew exactly what he would do, but for Shakespeare and his company, something wonderful happened. King James liked theater, he enjoyed plays, and he respected Shakespeare's company. Soon he gave them royal support. The Lord Chamberlain's men received a new name. They became the King's Men. This was a great honor. It meant they were no longer only a successful theater company. They were now connected to the royal court. They could perform for the king. They had protection. They had status. They had recognition from the highest power in the country. Imagine what this meant for Shakespeare. He had started as the son of a glove maker. He had come from a small town. He had faced family problems. He had entered London with no great name. He had been insulted by other writers. He had survived the plague and theater closures. And now his company was performing for the king. This was not luck alone. This was years of work, years of learning, years of adapting, years of writing, years of showing up. That is an important lesson. People may see your success when it appears, but they do not always see the years behind it. They do not see the nights of practice. They do not see the silent learning. They do not see the rejection. They do not see the fear. They do not see the moments when you almost stopped. They only see the result. But real success is built before the world notices. Shakespeare's royal success did not make his writing simple. In fact, his later plays became deeper, darker, and more thoughtful. He was older now. He had seen more of life. He had seen mania. He had seen money. He had seen criticism. He had seen success. He had seen loss. And his writing began to carry more weight. One of the great plays from this period was Macbeth. Macbeth is a story about ambition. It shows what can happen when a person wants power too much. At first, Macbeth is respected. He is brave. He has honor. But when the idea of becoming king enters his mind, his heart begins to change. He starts listening to dangerous thoughts. He begins to believe that power is more important than peace. He makes terrible choices, and every choice pulls him deeper into darkness. Macbeth teaches us that ambition is not always bad. Ambition can help us grow. Ambition can push us to work hard. Ambition can make us dream bigger, but ambition without morality becomes dangerous. If a person wants success so badly that he forgets honesty, kindness, and humanity, then success becomes poison. This lesson is still important today. Many people want to rise. They want money. They want fame. They want respect. They want a big name. But if they lose their character on the way, what have they really gained? Shakespeare understood this. He knew that the human heart can be strong, but also weak. He knew that one wrong desire can grow like fire. He knew that a person can win the world and still lose peace inside. After the Globe Theatre became Shakespeare's creative home, his life changed in a powerful way. He was no longer only a writer trying to survive. He was no longer only a young man from Stratford looking for a chance. He was becoming a major voice in England. People knew his name. Actors respected his words. Audiences waited for his plays. And every time his company performed, more people discovered the power of his imagination. But success did not make Shakespeare lazy. It did not make him stop. It did not make him comfortable forever. In fact, success pushed him deeper. He wanted to write better. He wanted to understand people more deeply. He wanted to create stories that would not disappear after one evening. He wanted to write stories that would remain in the heart. This is one reason his work survived. Some writers write only for attention. Some writers write only for money. Some writers write only to impress others. But Shakespeare wrote from a deeper place. He wrote about life. He wrote about the human heart. He wrote about the secrets people hide inside themselves. He wrote about love when love becomes painful. He wrote about ambition when ambition becomes dangerous. He wrote about power when power makes people blind. He wrote about jealousy when jealousy destroys trust. He wrote about guilt when guilt follows a person like a shadow. This is why his plays felt real. They were not only beautiful words, they were living emotions. And because human emotions do not become old, Shakespeare's work did not become old. The world changed, clothes changed, buildings changed, languages changed. But love was still love. Fear was still fear. Ambition was still ambition. Jealousy was still jealousy. Pain was still pain. And dreams were still dreams. This is why people still understand Shakespeare today. Not because his world was exactly like ours, but because his characters feel like us. They want something. They fear something. They lose something. They hope for something. They make mistakes. They try to understand their lives, and this makes them human. At the Globe Theatre, Shakespeare's plays reached all kinds of people. Rich people came. Poor people came. Educated people came. Ordinary workers came. Young people came. Old people came. Some stood close to the stage. Some sat in higher seats. But when the play began, everyone listened. For a few hours, people forgot their daily worries. They entered another world. They saw kings fall. They saw lovers suffer. They saw fools speak wisdom. They saw villains smile. They saw ghosts appear. They saw the beauty and danger of being human. This is the power of storytelling. A good story can bring different people together. A good story can make strangers feel the same emotion. A good story can teach without sounding like a lesson. A good story can stay in the heart longer than a speech. That is why Shakespeare's stage was more than entertainment. It was a mirror. When people looked at his plays, they saw life. They saw society. They saw themselves. But then history changed again. In 1603, Queen Elizabeth I died. She had ruled England for many years. Her time had been important for art, theater, exploration, and national pride. During her reign, theater had grown strongly. Shakespeare's company had also found success during that period. But when a ruler dies, the whole country becomes uncertain. People ask questions. What will happen now? Will the new king support theater? Will he dislike actors? Will he close theaters? Will life become harder? The new ruler was King James I. At first, nobody knew exactly what he would do. But for Shakespeare and his company, something wonderful happened. King James liked theater. He enjoyed plays, and he respected Shakespeare's company. Soon he gave them royal support. The Lord Chamberlain's men received a new name. They became the King's Men. This was a great honor. It meant they were no longer only a successful theater company. They were now connected to the royal court. They could perform for the king. They had protection. They had status. They had recognition from the highest power in the country. Imagine what this meant for Shakespeare. He had started as the son of a glove maker. He had come from a small town. He had faced family problems. He had entered London with no great name. He had been insulted by other writers. He had survived the plague and theater closures. And now his company was performing for the king. This was not luck alone. This was years of work, years of learning, years of adapting, years of writing, years of showing up. That is an important lesson. People may see your success when it appears, but they do not always see the years behind it. They do not see the nights of practice. They do not see the silent learning. They do not see the rejection. They do not see the fear. They do not see the moments when you almost stopped. They only see the result. But real success is built before the world notices. Shakespeare's royal success did not make his writing simple. In fact, his later plays became deeper, darker, and more thoughtful. He was older now. He had seen more of life. He had seen fame. He had seen money. He had seen criticism. He had seen success. He had seen loss. And his writing began to carry more weight. One of the great plays from this period was Macbeth. Macbeth is a story about ambition. It shows what can happen when a person wants power too much. At first, Macbeth is respected. He is brave. He has honor. But when the idea of becoming king enters his mind, his heart begins to change. He starts listening to dangerous thoughts. He begins to believe that power is more important than peace. He makes terrible choices, and every choice pulls him deeper into darkness. Macbeth teaches us that ambition is not always bad. Ambition can help us grow. Ambition can push us to work hard. Ambition can make us dream bigger. But ambition without morality becomes dangerous. If a person wants success so badly that he forgets honesty, kindness, and humanity, then success becomes poison. This lesson is still important today. Many people want to rise. They want money, they want fame, they want respect, they want a big name. But if they lose their character on the way, what have they really gained? Shakespeare understood this. He knew that the human heart can be strong, but also weak. He knew that one wrong desire can grow like fire. He knew that a person can win the world and still lose peace inside. Another great play was King Lear. King Lear is a heartbreaking story about an old king, his daughters, pride, family, betrayal, and regret. It shows how painful life can become when love is confused with flattery. King Lear wants to hear beautiful words from his daughters. He wants them to prove their love through speech. But the daughter who speaks most honestly is rejected, and the daughters who flatter him with false words gain power. This story teaches a deep lesson. Not everyone who praises you loves you. Not everyone who speaks sweetly is loyal. Sometimes the person who tells you the truth is the one who cares most. And sometimes the person who says what you want to hear is the one who will hurt you later. This is a powerful lesson for life. We must learn to value honesty over flattery. We must learn to listen to truth, even when truth is uncomfortable. We must not reject people simply because their words are not decorated. The deepest love is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it is honest. Sometimes it does not try to impress. Shakespeare's plays were full of these lessons, but he did not teach them like a teacher standing in front of a class. He taught through people, through choices, through mistakes, through consequences. This is why his stories stay alive. They allow us to feel the lesson. They allow us to experience it. They allow us to think for ourselves. Another important play from this later period was The Tempest. The Tempest is different from the darker tragedies. It is a story of magic, power, betrayal, forgiveness, and new beginnings. At the center of the story is Prospero, a man who has been betrayed and sent away. He lives on an island with his daughter. He has knowledge, he has power, he has magic. But the deeper question is not about magic. The deeper question is about forgiveness. What do you do when people hurt you? Do you spend your whole life seeking revenge? Or do you choose peace? Prospero has the chance to punish those who wronged him. But in the end, he chooses forgiveness. This is one of Shakespeare's most mature messages. Because forgiveness is not weakness. Forgiveness is power. It does not mean the pain never happened. It does not mean the betrayal was acceptable. It means you choose not to let anger control the rest of your life. This message feels like the voice of an older Shakespeare, a man who had seen enough pain to understand that revenge does not always heal the heart. A man who knew that sometimes letting go is the highest form of strength. As Shakespeare grew older, his writing changed because he changed. This happens to every creator. At first, you may create from excitement, then you create from ambition, then you create from experience, then you create from wisdom. Shakespeare's later work feels full of wisdom. It feels like a man looking at life and saying, I have seen beauty, I have seen darkness, I have seen love, I have seen loss, I have seen people rise, I have seen people fall. And now I understand that life is deeper than success alone. This is important for anyone chasing a dream. Success is good. Money can help. Recognition can feel beautiful. But success is not the whole meaning of life. What matters is what kind of person you become while chasing success. Do you become kinder? Do you become wiser? Do you become more honest? Do you help others? Do you create something valuable? Do you use your voice for something meaningful? Shakespeare's greatness was not only that he became famous. His greatness was that he created work that helped people understand life. And that is why he is remembered. Many famous people disappear from memory. Many rich people are forgotten. Many powerful people become only names in old books, but people who touch the human heart remain alive. Shakespeare touched the human heart through words, and words became his immortality. During these years, Shakespeare also became wealthy. He owned shares in the theater. He earned money from performances. He bought property. He became respected in both London and Stratford. For a man from an ordinary background, this was a remarkable achievement. But even with all this success, he never completely forgot home. Stratford remained part of him. The river, the fields, the small streets, the house where he grew up. The memories of childhood. The family he had left behind while building his career. A person can travel far, but the beginning always remains inside him. Shakespeare's life was divided between two worlds. London gave him fame. Stratford gave him roots. London gave him the stage. Stratford gave him memory. London gave him opportunity. Stratford gave him identity. And perhaps both were necessary. Because a dream needs wings, but it also needs roots. If you only have roots, you may never fly. If you only have wings, you may forget who you are. Shakespeare had both. He rose high, but he remembered where he came from. This is also a lesson for us. Never be ashamed of your beginning. Maybe you come from a small place. Maybe your family is not rich. Maybe your English is not perfect. Maybe your confidence is still weak. Maybe people do not understand your dream yet. That does not mean your future is small. Your beginning is not your limit. Your beginning is only your starting point. Shakespeare began as a small-town boy, but he did not remain only that. He learned, he worked, he adapted, he created, and slowly the world opened before him.